Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gents. This is Genvièv, and you are on Genvièv TV, your channel for forensic and clinical education. And today you're in for a treat because for the first time here on YouTube, I will be sharing with all of you a live BBC London radio interview of me, which will give you a raw, unedited, and behind-the-scenes overview into my work, diving into the mysteries of the mind. In other words, you will hear what truly happens when you begin to work with me and with your own brain plasticity and brain rewiring. After all, it is about time, don't you think, that all of us finally detach from the toxicity of lifelong wounds, limitations, and abusive relationships. Reclaim our power back and recover our truth, our authenticity, our purpose, and our life. So stay tuned right here, right now, and listen how. See you there.
Davis, host of The Peculiar World, and you are listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. If you aren't listening to my show right now, then I hope you
dream a little dream of me.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Peculiar World here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Jeff Davis. Tonight's broadcast, is going to be a bit different. Usually my podcasts are somewhat whimsical, and I admit I can get a bit over the top, especially about serious subjects. Tonight the show will be a little bit reversed. It will be a little more serious. It's about a subject that some people tend to treat with a bit of humor or even disdain, so that's why I want to be serious about it. Tonight we're going to talk about hypnosis. Its more serious side is a discipline for self-improvement and personal empowerment and growth. I think that some of the humor about hypnosis is due to some of its metaphysical origins and practitioners and stories about them. Some is due to a lack of understanding about what is hypnosis and how does it work, and finally because some entertainers use hypnosis to amuse and sometimes unsettle its audiences. And who doesn't make fun of something that unsettles them? If you are interested in the odder elements of hypnotism, please stay tuned into my other broadcasts. In the near future, maybe even next week, I plan to have another guest talk about the metaphysical side of hypnotism, including, and perhaps, telepathy, reincarnation, and past life regression. But for now, let's learn a little bit about hypnosis then, now, and possibly in the future. Now, what is hypnosis? The American Psychological Association says, hypnosis is a therapeutic technique in which clinicians make suggestions to individuals who have undergone a procedure designed to relax them and focus their minds. Although hypnosis has been controversial, most clinicians now agree it can be a powerful, effective therapeutic technique for a wide range of conditions, including pain, anxiety, and mood disorders. Hypnosis can also help people change their habits, such as quitting smoking. Oh, sorry, I got a little excited there. Now, I got this definition from the website of the American Psychological Association. It's interesting to me that the definition says what psychologists and therapists use hypnosis for, but it doesn't define or say how it works. Now, Merriam-Webster's dictionary, they have an explanation that is also vague. It doesn't explain how, merely the look and effect. It says, hypnosis is a trance-like state that resembles sleep, but is induced by a person whose suggestions are readily accepted by the subject. Number 2, any of various conditions that resemble sleep. That's interesting. Now, the search for how hypnotism works is just as interesting as what it's used for, and it goes back centuries. Many historians cite ancient mentalists and mediums in ancient Persia, India, and China for practicing what we might call hypnosis, all the way back in time, perhaps thousands of years. However, I want to talk about a man named Franz Mesmer, who many consider the father of modern Euro-American hypnotism. Now, I stole somewhat from a Wikipedia article about Mesmer, actually a couple different ones. I'm going to quote directly from the Wikipedia article, and after the first paragraph or so, it's all kind of mixed together. Now, according to Wikipedia, Franz Friedrich Anton Mesmer was born in 23 May 1734, and he died 5 March 1815. And he was a German doctor with an interest in astronomy who theorized that there was a natural energy transference that occurred between all animate and inanimate objects that he called animal magnetism, sometimes later referred to as mesmerism. The theory attracted a wide following between about 1780 and about 1850 and continued to have some influence until the end of the century. In 1843, the Scottish doctor James Braid proposed the term hypnosis for a technique derived from animal magnetism. Today, that is the usual meaning of mesmerism. Mesmer moved from Austria to Paris, where he became something of a celebrity healer. Mesmer never claimed his magnetic treatments would work to cure diseases such as smallpox. Instead, he concentrated on illnesses of the mind and the mood. He often dressed in a robe and carried a wand, which he supposedly used as part of his transference of animal magnetism. At one point, Mesmer had so many patients he had to treat them in large groups, who he immersed in water and magnetized iron filings, or is it filings? It's hard telling whether this magnetization came from some kind of a physical process where he passed the iron through a magnetic or electrical field, or from Mesmer's own personal animal magnetism powers. In time, Mesmer's personal practice waned and he left Paris. However, some of his pupils and other independent scholars continued studying the phenomenon and created their own practices, and some of them experimented with hypnosis as a form of anesthesia. They placed medical patients in a hypnotic state in preparation for surgery. Unfortunately for this budding practice, physical doctors and surgeons discovered other methods and substances such as ether, which was easier to learn to use and more reliable. So it eased out hypnosis as a form of anesthesia and surgery prep. Hypnosis gradually fell out of favor with medical practitioners, and it became something of a curiosity, sometimes used by psychologists when treating patients, but its reliability was always suspect by the mainstream. However, in the last few decades, as traditional medicine and mental health approaches have been questioned by the mainstream public and practitioners, hypnosis is a mental tool that is becoming increasingly used. I did a quick online search. There are no universal educational or registration criteria for the entire United States, or the world itself for that matter. However, the National Guild of Hypnotists was established in 1850. The guild has over 18,000 members with 100 local chapters in 89 different countries. I'm guessing a lot of them are here in the U.S. There are other organizations out there as well, and it seems that each state and professional collective organizations within it have established the criteria to regulate the registration and practice of hypnotherapists. So, with the population and social acceptance of hypnosis as a life-changing therapy, what can a hypnotherapist do for a client? And that is what my guest will be talking about. Now, my guest is Jean Viv Martin Bernard. She is a fellow and former president of the Oregon Hypnotherapy Association, and she is an award-winning board-certified instructor with the National Guild of Hypnotists. She is a valedictorian from the Ivy League University of the Sorbonne in France. She graduated summa cum laude from the Department of Doctorates of one of the oldest and most prestigious universities in the world. With specialized training in forensic discovery and years of expertise in the medical and legal fields, she acted as a communication liaison in complex and critical situations, including duties for the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. court system, and leading medical centers. Featured on the Discovery Channel, radio and television programs worldwide, Jean Viv is the author of Zen in the Art of Survival, published in the best-selling series Chicken Soup for the Soul, as well as diving into the unsolved mysteries of the mind, Make a Friend of Fear, Meditation in Motion, Lifeline, The Gift of Emotions, and countless magazine articles and columns on the performance and achievement and success. Her story is featured in Chicken Soup to Inspire the Body and Soul, Motivation to Get Over the Hump, and The Road to a Better Life. In 2017, Jean Viv received the National Guild of Hypnotists President's Award for Outstanding Achievement, Dedication, and Service to her profession. The President's Award is the highest recognition given by the NGH, the largest and oldest organization in her field worldwide. In 2018, Jean Viv was nominated Fellow of the Oregon Hypnotherapy Association. According to the OHA administrative definition, fellowship is the highest honor the association can bestow upon a member. This designation is awarded to individuals who have made significant contributions to the field and the organization. That is not all she does. She is an emergency medicine first responder with the Wilderness Medicine Institute. Jean Viv has decades of experience researching, practicing, and teaching the concepts and applications of working with brain plasticity, forensic and clinical hypnosis in the U.S. and overseas. So I introduce to you my friend Jean Viv Martin Bernard. Welcome, Jean Viv.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure being here with you in my Forensic and Clinical Hypnotherapy Center, Brain Rewiring and Brain Plasticity, in the beautiful Pacific Northwest of the United States.
I have to point out to everybody that Jean Viv is my first live podcast, as in we're sitting face to face looking at each other, and she's trying not to laugh as I'm making faces at her. Usually these podcast interviews are done remotely with Skype or some kind of messenger service, so I'm very happy that we're sitting here talking, particularly because the sound check was really easy this time. Now, Jean Viv, if you were not just a hypnotist, because that's an entertainer, that's somebody who makes people dance around like chickens. You do so much more. Please talk about it if you would.
Certainly. Well, my area of expertise is to help people overcome severe adversity and reconquer their truth, their poise, their strength, and their life, basically, after surviving trauma, abuse, or various kinds of life events. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I actually started in childhood. By the age of 15, I was already hypnotizing classmates, actually. And then I studied my entire life. I have an academic background at the University of the Sorbonne in Paris. But I'm also a medical emergency medicine first responder with the Wilderness Medicine Institute. So I handle extreme cases, extreme trauma of medical nature in the wilderness. I was a deep sea rescue diver and a member of the professional ski patrol teams of Mount Hood here locally in Oregon. And so I basically merged my medical background training and professional expertise with my academic background and my forensic and clinical approach to hypnotherapy to help the medical field. I work very seriously in close cooperation with licensed medical providers, mostly MDs, medical doctors, psychiatrists, and some psychologists, social workers on the well-being of their patients. So we team up, and we as hypnotherapists or hypnotists are not considered licensed medical providers, so we are educators, but we do address conditions in cooperation, in collaboration with the medical field. And here in America, I've been exploring brain rewiring and brain plasticity.
It's an interesting profession. I've noticed a lot of people in the healing professions start out with adversity in their own lives, which you kind of mentioned a little bit. So I thank you on behalf of other people who suffer. It's got to also be difficult, as you had talked a little bit about recognition, and I had mentioned serious people tend to think it's all a parlor game, but it's not. You've been assisting various government organizations, investigations, police, and other things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly. I do forensic hypnosis, so I have a legal background as well. I worked for years in the litigation world. I brought my hypnotherapy to the help of investigative teams, whether they are private investigators, national, international, New York Times bestselling authors also have brought me political assassinations that were unsolved, and together we worked with their witnesses and sometimes victims, and we're able to go back in time, sometimes 50 years in the past, to recover missing details and important vital leads from a criminal case that had sat dormant. And once we bring the person back in time forensically, it is literally as if we were back the day of the event and everything is unfolding around us like a movie, and we have the full sounds, effects, and progression of events, and it's literally absolutely fascinating. It's one of my deep areas of interest, and so far we've been very successful. Every case that has been brought to me, we were able to recover vital missing leads that brought the case some resolution.
Can you, I know you may have confidentiality.
Absolutely, I do in everything that I have, so I'm not able to give specific details, but I do have some criminal case files on my website that are accessible. Some of the identifying details and names, of course, have been modified to protect confidentiality. However, there are fascinating cases that are accessible for public read. If you so desire to visit, it's genvièvhypnosis.com. Under the forensic section, you will find criminal case files.
Can you summarize one or two of your favorite ones?
Certainly. Well, there was one that was one of the most recent, actually, that was very interesting because at school, when we learn about forensic hypnosis, we are taught that forensic hypnosis will not apply in matters where there's been amnesia brought on by drug intoxication or medicines or any kind of substances. So we are taught that if the person had complete amnesia due to intoxication from specific types of substances, forensic hypnosis will not work. And we're taught to turn down those cases. And initially, a few people had approached me over the years asking me to help them regress in time after telling me they were drugged. And my initial response was to say, well, this is a known case where forensic hypnosis will not help. And one of the most recent cases, I actually took the case with one of my close colleagues, and we regressed the person who had been experiencing an 8-hour complete amnesia following a drug-induced sexual assault, zero memory whatsoever. We brought her back in time to the moment of the last moment of coherent awareness before she blacked out, and we were able to recover all of the unfolding sequence of events. And that was groundbreaking in research and in showing us that, in fact, there is a part of the mind that is constantly aware. And in fact, forensic hypnosis does provide, or at least in that case, it certainly did. So it shows me that it's absolutely possible and definitely worth investigating. And not only does it help us bring back the recollection, which for a victim is immensely therapeutic, because there is a very, very painful aspect of having been attacked and having no memory of what happened. And that sense of the mind searching for answers and searching for clues and going in loop over that blackout, trying to pierce through, is very painful emotionally. And being able to go back in time, especially with somebody like me who's also a clinical hypnotherapist, to release the trauma, release the anxiety and the stress associated with that event, and yet recover the memory and be able to emerge strong. So no longer as a victim, but as a survivor and a thriver who recovers their strength, their truth, and their power after adverse life events.
Yes, I'm going to back us both up about 10 or 15 minutes because we were talking prior to turning on the recorder. One of the things that's happened to me as an experience is I was violently attacked by somebody who had smoked meth about 2 hours before the altercation. And I was talking to somebody about the experience, and this person, very super nice person, tried to be understanding, but in that attempt to be understanding and empathetic, the conversation started going in a direction that made me the victim. And to me, there's a huge difference between being a victim and being victimized. All of us have had bad experiences. All of us have had bad actors doing terrible things to us, physically or emotionally. To a lot of people, they will come out of that and they will feel sorry for themselves. And they will say, I'm a victim. It's not my fault. I'm a victim. And then people will rush to support them. But that's not complete healing to everybody, in my opinion. If you have been victimized, but you pull yourself out and you've regained your strength, like this woman you were talking about, everybody's been victimized. But being a victim is, I think, somebody's self-view. And they're two different things.
Absolutely. And that's actually a very, very important point, is after adversity, well, there is a moment where all of us are going to collapse. Even if you look at superhero movies, and you will see them collapsing, the superheroes themselves in fiction. And it takes some time after being hit by extreme adversity, where you're left broken on your knees on the ground, robbed, betrayed, and sometimes left to die. And you will stay there for a while. That's the victim part. But that adversity, there is a sentence that says the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. That adversity, you can choose to remain a victim and therefore you will not stand back up, or there is a point where you're going to decide, I will survive. And then that moment we stand back up, and that's the moment where we go from being a victim to being a victor, and from surviving to thriving. And where we gather that strength that was brought to us by adversity and become victorious over it and become stronger and more resilient and more resourceful than ever before. It's called the adversity advantage. The adversity in life brings us a level of understanding, compassion, resourcefulness, understanding at the deepest level. We become richer in our comprehension, in our ability to feel and relate to others. And we become more interesting as well, more aware. If you talk to somebody who's been given everything on a silver platter, you'll notice that there's not much depth to them. There is a level of
superficiality,
a lack of expertise, experience, and depth of understanding, and they're not very interesting. And adversity, while it's never enjoyable to go through, does push us over and beyond our boundaries and forces us to expand and become more than we were before.
I tend to agree with you. Not that I would wish anyone else to be attacked by somebody who just smoked meth. The whole thing of what can I survive? I have survived this. And I'm going to, as an aside, I do, in the midst of most podcasts, talk to the listening audience. If you had tuned in at this point thinking that I was going to be having Jean Viv hypnotize me and make me turn into a chicken, that's not going to happen. The nature of my attempt at doing these podcasts is the world is a peculiar place. Odd, unusual things happen. And it's not just about D.B. Cooper or ghosts. Well, most of it is about ghosts. But I've known her for many, many years, and I really believe, to use the fancy word efficacy, the advantage of going through some kind of a hypnotherapy incident. To some people, this is the same as if you had spent quite a bit of time doing meditations. If you have a guide like a hypnotherapist, that can speed up the process, perhaps. Not that I'm advocating everybody should go ahead and see a hypnotherapist. It'll be good for you.
So why would someone not want to work with their brain? We all use a very small percentage of our brains, and the problem is it's the first thing we should learn when we start learning anything, and nobody teaches us how to operate and make the most of our brain capacities. We figure it out, in a very small percentage as we go along through life. But being able to tap into more of the functioning of our brain and operate areas of our bodies. With the brain, we can produce anesthesia in the body if we're needing to perform for a short moment of time and block a certain pain. Now, of course, that's not something we want to do on a continuous basis, because pain is a flag that needs to be addressed by a proper licensed medical provider. But learning how to work with our brain gives us a scope of abilities.
And there's a little bit of what we consider mysticism thrown in, and not that it's weird, strange mysticism, but I've taken psychology classes. I think anyone who's been to, say, community college as a prerequisite, Psych 101, Psych 102, or Psych 103. And it's interesting viewing psychology textbooks over the years in the glossaries and definitions of terms. Hypnosis, when it's defined, the definition I've noticed changes over time in their description of reaching a hypnotic state. Is it hallucinating? Is it
Definitely not.
Yeah, and the textbooks themselves, if they're written by honest people, they say it works, but we don't know quite why.
Well, it's very simply a state of physical, mental, and emotional relaxation. So the reason why it's so misunderstood is due to fictionalization of the state of hypnosis and its applications, especially in the old days, although it's still happening in current days, though quite less. But the fictionalization of hypnosis depicted it way back in the day as a state where you lose the control of your mind and you're being telecommanded, teleguided by somebody else. And it's a gross misperception. What it is really, it's a deep state of profoundly restorative wellness, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and we see that even with biofeedback these days, learning how to modulate our breathing and our heartbeat, and we see the immediate effect on our central nervous system on the computer software. With functional MRI studies of the brain in the state of hypnosis, we see very immediate, very real and noticeable changes in the chemical and hormonal balance in the brain in that state. And those changes correspond to what initially antidepressant, anti-anxiety prescription medications were intended to do when they were engineered. They were intended to produce a specific effect in the brain that we actually produce naturally in a state of hypnosis, which is an immediate drop in stress hormones. Adrenaline, cortisol drop down immediately in the state of hypnosis. Cortisol, as all steroids, produces all the things we don't want: immediate inflammation in the body, aches and pains, accelerated aging, immune system deficiency, immediate down-regulation of the prefrontal cortex, and less brain capacity, basically. We've all experienced that when we're under high stress, our brain seems to freeze or not function as well. So in the state of hypnosis, one of the first things that we see, cortisol levels dropping significantly. And they're replaced by a boost in endorphins, dopamine, norepinephrine, so all our natural feel-good hormones in our body. This allows the immune system to replenish and restore. It allows our mind to immediately clarify, so brain fog is washed out and our memory is supercharged. So that is an excellent state to place ourselves in when we're studying something, when we are in an exam taking a test. We will function significantly better in that state. So I teach everybody who works with me how to enter that state, program it, anchor it, so they can replicate it whenever they need, whether they're in bed at night so they can fall asleep easier, sleep better through the night, or whether they're in a job meeting, in a job interview, in a work meeting, in an exam. I do a lot of exam performance. I've worked with physicians who were failing their board exams. A lot of different physicians through the nation came to me after failing their board exams 3, 4, 5 years in a row. And within just 1, 2, or 3 sessions, literally every single one of them has aced their board exam. I have so far 100% score on physicians acing their board exams after 1, 2, or 3 sessions with me, just retraining their brain to perform better. It's not a state where we lose control. It's quite the opposite, actually. We regain more of the control of our mind in that state.
In some ways, people pre-programmed each other or themselves in that somebody says, you can't do that. An adult says that to a child, and then the child believes they can't. Or how many of us here or listening to this broadcast have been doing things, especially in childhood, and you were really good at it, and then somebody came along and said, you can't do that, that's impossible. And then somehow being told something's impossible, like the fable about the centipede's dilemma. You can't move 100 legs in step, and then people can't.
Absolutely, and that's actually a very key to what I do. It's called negative hypnosis or negative programming. We're especially sensitive to this when we're children because we don't know who we are yet, and also because we are taught that the authority figures around us, our parents, our teachers, our siblings, our peers, especially parents and teachers, that they know the truth and we don't. And therefore, when those authority figures start having negative feedback towards us, and especially if it's combined with a strong emotion. So if we have a combination of a strong emotion, an authority figure, and repetition, that is the actual recipe for imprinted belief on the mind, and that can be a completely wrong belief. And it very often is. It's simply a reflection of somebody else's problem, somebody else's issue, somebody else's fears or limitations, and they're having a moment of stress, or they're simply narcissistic and degrading, and they will imprint a belief on the child. And as children, we are a blank slate. We will adopt that belief, we will assume that it is a truth, and the moment that we do, that belief becomes embedded in our mind, and even more so when it's repeated through the course of our childhood growing up, that will create physiological symptoms, thoughts and actions and reactions, and lead the way to our reality today. And a belief will remain in place in somebody's mind, in our own brain, until one of two things happen. Number one is the person dies. Number two is that belief is actually replaced by another belief. And we can't do that consciously when it's been imprinted in our mind. We have to do that at the subconscious level. Take an emotion that's no longer working for us today and forensically regress it back to the root cause. So we're back in childhood, usually, most of the time, when we were shaken or threatened or shocked, and somebody implemented that belief. And that allows us to bring your adult self of today, and your adult self is going to help that child of then, the younger you, understand that no matter who said what or what happened, that little one is strong, unique, and irreplaceable exactly as they are, and worthy and capable of doing anything they decide they want to do. And so we're basically repatterning, we are repairing the emotional fabric.
If you were going to hypnotize me, kind of what's the process? If you could describe, say, I wanted to retrieve a hidden memory. Say I was not a victim but victimized, and I wanted to have you help me track down the person or the car they were driving when they harmed me. How would you go about that?
The induction into hypnosis varies greatly. We have a plethora of methodologies to get you into that state. One of my colleagues, who is a professor in his 80s, used to be a show hypnotist, so he can shock you in half a second into a deep state of hypnosis. And I prefer the more gentle approach. But we have various methodologies, and they can be very short as well. Even with a gentle approach, we can get somebody in hypnosis within a very short, more than a few seconds. And it's basically a relaxation of your central nervous system. And then once we are in that state, if you're wishing to recover some missing information, we will go to the last memory that you have at that moment in time before you lost the trail of events. So we will go maybe a few minutes before or half an hour before and take it back from them, and there see the unfolding of events. And what is very important with forensic hypnosis is to not lead in any way, shape, or form, because if we do, we will influence you. So we would just bring you back to the moment where you still remember, and then leave you there and ask you to describe what happens next. And the memory, you'll be back at that moment, seeing everything unfolding around you. And it's really fascinating to experience. You notice the sounds around you, the temperature of the air, and the sights and the movements, and you're back into that movie, that kaleidoscope, that tapestry of your life at that moment in time, seeing everything unfold around you.
A number of questions came to mind. For instance, in the introduction, I talked a little bit about Franz Mesmer, and on television, everybody seems to have a pocket watch.
That's the old image of hypnosis.
Yeah.
We do not wave a pocket watch in front of you, though we could, but that's not typically what we're doing.
Yeah. Would you start with somebody laying down on a couch, or?
Well, in my practice here, I have a luxuriously comfortable leather recliner that is said to feel as if you were floating in zero gravity. And then I guide you with my voice, so there's no gimmicks, like no flashing lights. Actually, I have a fun story about that. As I'm guiding somebody in hypnosis, and we're here on a wildlife wetland refuge, so it's very peaceful and very quiet. I have thick carpeting on the ground in the main room where I do the hypnosis sessions. And I tend to pace around the person simply because I do not use any form of scripts. I've done this my whole life, so I don't read anything. And as I'm leading and guiding somebody into that state, I'm basically adapting every part of my work to them, who they are and their goals and their limitations and their specific requirements. So it's nothing that I read. So in other words, I am guiding that person based upon their own specific situation. And as I'm doing that, I'm pacing around them very quietly on the carpet there. with no shoes, since it's a comfortable carpeting. So you don't hear me moving. And I once had a person emerge from the session and look around the ceiling, and I was wondering what he was looking for. And he finally asked me, how do you do this trick that your voice is hovering around me? Do you have microphones through the ceiling? And I laughed. I said, absolutely not. I'm simply walking around you as I'm talking because it helps my brain continue to stay in that flow. So as my body is moving, my voice is sort of hovering around them. But that was funny because he thought that I was wired, and that was to give the impression that the person was in hypnosis. That's the only time somebody ever asked me that. And so now before I hypnotize somebody, I tell them, by the way, if you hear my voice moving around you, it's because my body is actually moving as well.
Yeah, is interesting. It seems to me that some of your clients, and maybe if I were a client, all of your clients would have unconsciously an expectation of a gimmick. I remember in the 60s and 70s, they would have the spinning wheel with the little, look like a vortex. Or yes, you mentioned the colored lights. Look at the lights flashing. Aren't they pretty?
We don't need any of that anymore. I can hypnotize somebody in the middle of a forest. I'm in a state of hypnosis when I'm skiing, flying down the mountains at neck-breaking speeds. It's simply a state of deep, nurturing, wonderful relaxation. So we can have eye fixation. If somebody wants to try eye fixation, we can have you look at a spot on the ceiling and fixate on it. But it's not necessary. We could certainly hypnotize somebody like back in the old days by swinging something in front of them. But none of that is necessary. You can simply gently close your eyes and go and glide into that state. Learn to sink into that deep level of relaxation that's there at the depth of your body, and begin to experience it so you can replicate it in your day-to-day life, and it can begin to serve you in a way that it was designed to serve you.
Okay. This then too, as you're helping people unlock these abilities, what are some of the more interesting things people have been able to unlock while in a state of hypnosis, or especially afterward? What kind of stuff?
Well, there's a story that comes to mind right now. That was one of the most incredible stories. I've been doing this full time now. As I said, I've been doing this my whole life, but it wasn't full time until I arrived in the Pacific Northwest here 10 years ago, and there was such a high demand at that time because of the state of the economy and people were not doing well, that I was gently led to doing this constantly. Along the course of these years, I once worked with a woman who came to see me and did not tell me that she was deaf. She was reading my lips the entire time, but she didn't mention this to me. So imagine what happened was once I had her eyes closed, and she's in a deep state of hypnosis, but she's no longer reading my lips. And I suddenly realized that I had lost communications with her. And she was coming to see me for deep depression, sent by her doctor, her medical practitioner. And so while I was wondering what I was going to do, because she was no longer reading my lips, I continued with my intention on bringing her back to the root cause, while I was thinking, okay, she's not hearing me. What am I going to do if she's not hearing me? And interestingly, once I regressed her back to the root cause for her current state of emotional distress, she was 2 years old, being abandoned in a Latin American country. At that time, she wasn't deaf at all, and her hearing returned. At that moment, she was listening to me and responding to me, and we processed through all of the work that we needed to do, incredibly, 100% smoothly and effortlessly. And then as I regressed her back to her moment of today, so of course her loss of hearing is not going to disappear in a hypnosis session. However, we were able to address the root cause and regress her and bring her back to her position in her life of today, having resolved the emotional distress, which was no longer weighing her down. And now, how did she hear me during that time? I have no idea, because once I emerged her back, she resumed listening and reading my lips. But we were able to produce and conclude that session in spite of her hearing loss, which was quite incredible.
Yeah, it is interesting. Fortunately, I don't have a master's or PhD in psychology to speculate about hysterical deafness or things like that. It is what it is. And it's just fascinating. You were able to bring out that which was submerged. What else do people come to you for, like regular clientele, weight loss, or?
We help basically everyday people with everyday problems, and that's what we like to say. So it can be procrastination, it can be motivation, loss of motivation. My area of expertise is adversity, helping people survive and thrive through adversity, reconquer their truth, their self, their poise, their inner strength after being hit by life so strongly that it sometimes leaves you on your knees. In fact, you and I were joking about that area of death, so to speak, since you're specializing death after life, and I specialize in life after death, in a way that adversity sometimes leaves us dead, and we have to find life after that death, basically. So resurrecting the self from dreadful events that left us as good as dead, so to speak, on our knees and non-functioning. And very simple day-to-day goals, as well as you were mentioning, weight loss, addictions, and that can be a food addiction. One of my favorites is to turn an addiction into a repulsion. And we do that with food that we have issues with, somebody who has a compulsive craving or addictions for candies, chocolate chip cookies, ice cream, whatever it can be. And it can also be obviously more serious addictions, substances, medications, alcohol, drugs, whatnot. And again, I work in close cooperation there with the medical field as well. And it can be addiction to a person as well. And we've all experienced this, going through a breakup with somebody who clearly was very toxic and dangerous, and we want nothing to do with that person. But there's a part of you that won't let go, basically, that's going to be longing that person. And that's one of the things I love to do, is turn that addiction into a repulsion. We can do that for an ice cream cookie, we can do that for potato chips, and we can do that for that person who harmed you and who you felt so strongly for. And in literally one session, we'll be able to turn that addiction, that craving, that longing for something or someone into a strong, lasting repulsion. And that what does that give you? Your freedom back. Your freedom, whether it's in terms of food or substances that had enslaved you, finding yourself effortlessly non-attracted to those, or whether it's with somebody who broke your heart, finding your freedom again in a way that when you think or look or fall upon them, you will find that healthy repulsion within you, that you look at them and think, what was I thinking? I mean, seriously, that's your freedom. You get your freedom back. So what do? I give people their freedom back.
Excellent. And I wonder about this too. Do you always need to know where the problem originated, like
No,
Freud
you
would?
don't.
No?
Actually, the best is that you don't. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of time, and that's an excellent question, a lot of time we will think we know, and it might be even earlier, it might be even before then. For instance, I had a man coming to see me a few years ago telling me I had a big catastrophic chain of events in the last several years. The economy collapsed, the company I was vice president of was dismantled, so he lost his job, he lost his career, he lost his spouse, his wife left him, he lost his home, catastrophic chain of events. And he said, after that point, I started procrastinating, and I found myself for the first time in my life unable to accomplish anything. And so he naturally assumed that this chain of events was the root cause. And I told him, keep an open mind, because usually when we stop functioning and we don't bounce back up, it means that chain of event or that specific event we're thinking of that could be the culprit was a re-trigger of a former fracture in our emotional fabric, and the mind then concludes, well, see, I knew it all along, I'm faulty, I'm not good enough, and that's when we stay stuck. So it's usually a re-trigger. So sometimes we will think back through the course of our lives and believe that one event caused something, and we could be right, and there are other times that it could be actually much before that event. Sometimes it's something that happens at birth. I had a woman come to see me once, sent by her doctor, her medical doctor, for insomnia. And she had done those sleep studies and stayed in hospital and tried all these different methodologies that had not brought resolution to her issue. And when I brought her back to the cause, interestingly, she went back through the moment she was born. And apparently, as she was being born, the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck and stopped the airflow, and she died for just a few seconds there. She was then revived. But her mind at that moment assimilated closing her eyes with dying. And while she recovered like we do, we are extreme experts at coping with
resilience.
Resilience, exactly. We cope, and so we camouflage and we bury an issue and we continue functioning. So she functioned quite well for most of her life, and then there was a chain of events just before she began experiencing that severe insomnia that shook her sense of safety and re-triggered that infant mechanism, that infant belief that if I close my eyes, I will die. And even though she didn't remember it in any way, shape, or form, and never assumed that would be the cause, she thought her husband got shifted to some other country, so she had to move with him, and it was very stressful. She thought that was the cause. But when we regressed the cause, and I always ask the mind to go back to the root of that emotion, basically, so we don't know where the mind is going to go, that's where she went. And she told me, I had heard from my mother and from my family that I had died for a few moments in childhood, but I never remembered it. It was filed in the long ago remote layers of memories, and she certainly didn't think that could be the cause. And once we addressed that and helped her mind understand that while at that moment in time it was correct that in fact her eyes were closed and she died for a moment, it didn't by any way, shape, or form mean that today if she closed her eyes she will die. Quite the opposite. She needs to close her eyes today to recover her strength and her wellness. So once we identify the cause and we understand it, and we're able to bring that understanding to the subconscious part of the mind that regulates our heartbeat and all of our vital operation, once that understanding is done, we're able to release that, and that issue is dissolved, and it never comes back. Once it's addressed properly, the problem is resolved. So that's another example of something that she certainly wouldn't have been able to identify that. So I tell people, don't even worry about trying to find the cause. That's what we do here in session.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. In a way, kind of speechless in a way, because that is, if not unexpected, the story itself, that how far back a trauma or even a positive thing can affect our outlook, even if we don't remember it. Talking about unlocking other abilities, somebody I know claimed that in a state of hypnosis, people might be able to do things like read a book that's reflected in somebody else's glasses, upside down and backwards. What do you think?
Never heard about that.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what that means. Reflected backwards in somebody's glasses.
Say I'm holding a
you
book.
Mean your awareness will be increased. Yes, so that would make sense. Well, it all goes to the fact that we're not using our brain as much as we can. We have abilities that we haven't even begun to tap into. So it's true that in that state, first of all, our awareness is incredibly expanded. Our memory is as well. And that's why we're able to go back in time and recover memories that we didn't even remember, that we still remembered. That's also why we're able to unblock repressed trauma that the mind has shut down in order to continue processing and functioning at that moment in time. So we do have much higher capacities, and that's why it's a state that is so beneficial to learn for all of us and to apply in our day-to-day lives to help us function better at everything that we do. So I'm not sure exactly of the process of the reflection in glasses, but that makes sense in that our awareness is expanded. We hear better in that state. Because stress levels go down, so our mind's clarity is vastly expanded. So our awareness is crystal clear, our memory is supercharged, so we memorize better in that state, both new information and we recover information that's been long memorized. We're calmer. Anybody that's calmer is going to function better. So yes, it would make sense.
Okay, great. Thank you for kind of clarifying that a little bit. Because, of course, again, those of us not in the business, our sole teacher about what's hypnosis all about is usually really bad science fiction and horror movies.
I know.
Especially people here on the Paranormal UK radio network. Now, which reminds me, too, people are listening to this broadcast. The actual home of the Paranormal UK network is, of course, in the United Kingdom. And there's an expectation that you have to be live, physically present with a hypnotherapist. That's not true, is it?
No, I work with a lot of people at a distance as well, and nowadays you can work so easily. And you know, we work through also, there's lots of recordings available where you can actually learn to hypnotize yourself. I've worked with physicians from their own hospitals or offices on the East Coast while I'm on the West Coast. I've actually worked with people in the UK also and sent them some specific recordings for their own needs. And I am myself from Monte Carlo, so I'm a European as well, Principality of Monaco. And just recently this summer I was doing a workshop with a colleague over there on the French Riviera. So you no longer necessarily need to be, we're long from the Mesmer's time or the James Braid, and they were spending 7 or 8 or 9 hours rotating with staff around a person to place them in that deep state of hypnosis. Nowadays we can do that very rapidly, and with technology today it's wonderful. We can educate people in how to help themselves no matter where we're located on the planet, as long as we have a good connection electronically.
Yeah, because this is what I do, this is my show. So, Monte Carlo, Monaco, does that make you a Monacan?
No! Wrong answer. Would you like to try this again and go for double jeopardy when you can really win the jackpot?
Monacan? Okay, with someone from Monaco.
You're starting to sound like Moroccan, which would be from Morocco, Africa. But when we're talking about Monte Carlo, which is the heart, the commercial and civil center of the Principality of Monaco, the people from Monaco are called Monégasques.
Ah.
So quite different from Moroccans, which is from Morocco. The Monégasques are the native of Monte Carlo, although I'm a native of Monaco, but I'm not a Monégasque, because in order to be a Monégasque, you have to be born in Principality of Monaco for 7 uninterrupted generations, if it's still the same as it was when I was growing up there. And my sister and I were the first generation of born in Monaco in our family. So we took the nationalities of our parents.
Ah, well, long live Prince Rainier anyway.
Oh, we miss him. He was wonderful. He was our best prince ever.
Yeah.
Definitely a wonderful figure.
And because a lot of you listening to this broadcast do like old movies, old films, at least I hope so, he was married to Grace Kelly.
Princess Grace, definitely.
And it really was, despite how things seem to have ended, they seem to be good and decent people.
They were wonderful. I mean, we loved Princess Grace. She was magnificent inside and out.
Yeah. Now I have to bring us back to hypnosis.
And the mysteries of the mind. So basically, I bring people down into the depth of their mind to uncover their power, their true power, and release what's no longer needed.
Now, I had brought you to the point where you were talking about you do have some recordings out. So if I'm just alluding to people who want to help you continue earning a living and getting better, where can people find you on the internet, find your hypnosis recordings, any place to make an appointment with you to talk by phone or live or in the internet? Just go ahead and let me know.
Certainly. Well, thank you for asking, Jeff. Well, the first place would be my website, genvievhypnosis.com. I don't know if you'll have links somewhere under the video, but it's G as in George, E as in Edward, N as in Nancy, V as in Victor, I-E, V as in Victor, and then the word hypnosis, hypnosis.com. That's my main website, but mostly these days, you'll find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Genvièv TV. That's where I am hosting my live educational series, where you can see me live and you can learn from me directly on my channel. The more subscribers, the better, because that really inspires me to share my message, my teachings with others. You can ask questions underneath the videos. My last video that I uploaded last Sunday is about surviving adversity, trauma, and abuse, and reconquering your truth. And I will give in each and every one of these videos, I give strong, efficient, rapid, and lasting methodologies for improvement. And lastly, there is a store that is accessible with worldwide distribution at FBR, that stands for Forensic Brain Rewiring. So fbr.hearnow.com. And before that, you can put HTTPS, 2 points, you call that a semicolon? Colon, okay. HTTPS / fbr.hearnow.com. That's simply a store where you can access one of my recordings. But again, it's easy to go on youtube.com/Genvièv TV and connect with me there. I'm on Facebook as well, under Genvièv Martin Bernard, under Genvièv Hypnosis, and under Forensic Brain Rewiring. I have 3 different Facebook pages. I'm on Twitter. I heard that the Google Plus pages are going to be shut down, so I'm not going to mention that.
Yay.
Apparently Google Pages is shutting down all of its pages. So that leaves us with YouTube being the best, because you can see me live, you can hear my teachings and directly begin to apply this at home from that series, from those episodes, and you can interact with me directly underneath the videos.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Now, we're not quite done yet or gone yet. We've still got a couple minutes. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that still kind of burns to you? Because this most recent YouTube video has been really well received. Anything coming out of that?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually one of my areas that I absolutely love working in. It is helping adult survivors of childhood trauma. Because as we discussed earlier on, it leaves a lasting impact. And I think it's time in adulthood to begin our best childhood, so to speak, and to finally learn to nurture ourselves and go for our dreams. And talking about helping everyday people reach for their dreams and start to feel better is the number one. That's what we all go for. That's our ultimate goal, is to feel better. And so sometimes we think, if I have this type of car or this type of work or this type of fame, I will feel better. But how about starting to feel better now, exactly as we are, and then expand and enjoy life? And once we unfold and flourish, then incredible opportunities come our way, because we glow, because we radiate a higher level of wellness and energy and joy. And that's what I specialize in bringing to everybody, is feeling better right now, not waiting for that great job or that great relationship or that ideal goal, is beginning to feel better now in your life of today by nurturing yourself and simple, rapid and lasting steps for wellness and success and happiness in your day of today, beginning to enjoy your path. That's the key. That's the ultimate goal.
Exactly. Hypnosis. Through you, we learned a lot more about hypnosis. It has come a long way since Franz Mesmer used to have people laying down in a bathtub full of magnetized iron shavings and play music around them. While not quite as mystically fulfilling, maybe, certainly a lot more practical.
Definitely, and just as enjoyable. And I'm sure I would have liked to be a subject for Mesmer and see how he did things, but he certainly opened up a lot of the field. But we do today have the capacity to all enjoy the same incredible results with less of the gadgets, so to speak.
But I want that cute crystal.
Well, you can have it. Certainly, I can wave a crystal in front of you if that's what you need to fulfill your experience of hypnosis.
Okay. Thank you for being so accommodating. Thank you for sharing your stories.
My pleasure, Jeff. Anytime. It's a pleasure.
Okay, mon petit chou. And we shall go for now.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you join me and ask your questions on YouTube. I will be welcoming you with happy thoughts and a happy heart.
Yes, and please do, after this broadcast, visit my website, ghostsandcritters.com. Go to the What's New, and I should have links that Jean Viv will hopefully send me, and you can follow those links to find out more. So thank you very much, and good night to all.
Good night. Stars shining bright above you, breezes seem to whisper